Deep within the Bankhead National Forest, located in northern Alabama, there is a lone stretch of road where locals claim the spirit of an old woman known as Aunt Jenny stands guard over her resting place. Born Louisa Bates, Aunt Jenny became known as one of Alabama's most enduring legends. According to these stories, she and her family hunted down 7 men in a deadly quest for revenge. The forest surrounding her former residence leaves visitors feeling isolated. Towering trees block much of the sky above, and cell phone signals are almost non-existent. Her spirit said to appear to those who venture too close to her property, warn them to stay away or suffer the consequences. Louisa suffered many tragic losses during the Civil War, and these tragedies would fuel her family's quest for vengeance. Today we're going to dive into the paranormal and historical tale of Aunt Jenny and the Brooks family revenge. According to locals, there are several burial sites scattered throughout the forest, many of them left abandoned. However, one graveyard found in the woods contains the graves of Louisa Bates and several of her children. This gravesite is not the only area of interest, as located nearby are the decaying remains of the house she lived in before her death. Stories from residents of the nearby town of Haleyville, Alabama, tell of strange occurrences surrounding the dilapidated residence. One of the common legends says that if you stop your car in front of her house and put it in neutral, some paranormal force will begin pushing the car away from the property line. Others have claimed that at night, an elderly apparition appears next to the road, warning people to turn back and not approach her house or the graves further down the trail. One of the more unsettling stories says that those who stand near her grave at night experience overwhelming feelings of dread and paranoia. Soon afterwards, they begin hearing movement and distant laughter coming from the edge of the forest. Not all the stories have a scary ending. Some claim that leaving small items such as bones, coins, or little figures near her grave is known to bring good fortune. While the supernatural side of her story is certainly interesting, Louisa's story lies in a very real tragedy. To understand how her ghostly legend was born, it's time we talk about Louisa's life, the devastating losses she endured during the Civil War, and the bloody revenge that cemented her place in Alabama folklore. Louisa was born in Kentucky on January 22, 1826, to James and Annie Brown Bates. Early in life, her family would move to North Alabama, and after many years, she would meet a man twice her age named Willis Brooks. According to several accounts, it was Willis who gave Louisa the nickname Jenny, the name by which she would later become known throughout the region. They would go on to marry and have several children together. They had their eldest son John, followed by 8 other children named Angeline, Mac, Amanda, Willis Jr., Donnie, Ganem, Henry, and Francis. Over time, as their family grew, Louisa and Willis would dedicate a lot of time running an inn, located on the much-traveled Byler Road. The inn gained popularity among travelers and locals alike, and soon would become central to the tragedy that would befall the Brooks family as the American Civil War had begun. While the war raged onward, many soldiers from both the Union and Confederacy were tired of the war efforts and became deserters. It is said that Willis Brooks offered the inn as a shelter to these people. The Confederate States had begun drafting people from ages 17 to 50 to help resupply their army, and Louisa and Willis had to now deal with keeping their son John protected since he was eligible for the draft. Whether it was helping deserters, protecting John from the draft, or being labeled as Union sympathizers, the Brooks family had attracted the unwanted attention of the local Confederate Home Guard. The Home Guard were known to track down Confederate deserters and draft dodgers, and deal with civilians considered to be sympathetic to the Union. It wouldn't be long before 8 hired members of the Home Guard arrived at the inn. Stories state that the family could do very little besides watch as Willis was dragged out from his home at gunpoint. He was bound and viciously beaten by the 8 men before they dragged him to a nearby tree, tied a rope around his neck, and hanged him in front of Louisa and 8 of their kids. The oldest son, John, forcefully exited their home and attempted to save his father. The home guard turned and shot John dead before turning back to Willis and firing several times into his hanging body. These deaths did not satisfy the 8 men, who proceeded to burn the family house and its surrounding buildings to the ground before they fled. Willis was 57 and John was 17 when they both died. The remaining members of the Brooks family were devastated. They laid Willis and John to rest, and according to stories told by the locals, the family made a dark declaration for revenge. Each man responsible for this tragedy would pay with their lives. According to legend, Louisa and her remaining sons gathered around the bloody corpse of her husband. Each placed their hands within his blood, swearing an oath that they would not rest until all 8 killers of her husband and son were dead. To ensure the success of her revenge, Louisa spent the next few years showing her boys how to shoot. This was something she took great pride in teaching. Her shooting lessons led to great success, and over time, the boys would grow into excellent marksmen and ruthless gunslingers. This would eventually lead to the formation of the infamous gang known as the Brooks Boys. The time had come to begin enacting her vengeance, as Louisa and her boys had learned the locations of several of the 8 men she sought to kill. The most memorable and haunting of the killings was the very first one taking place in the year 1864. This was the murder of the Home Guard leader that Louisa and her son Mac had tracked down. It is said that they waited outside the man's house until he was about to leave on horseback before they proceeded to ambush and shoot the man dead. Jenny had Mac help her drag the man's stiffened corpse to the nearby woods. She severed the man's head from his body, carried it in a sack back to her home, and placed it in a large boiling pot. In the end, all that was left of the head was the skull with the jawbone removed. The legend further states that Louisa often used the skull as a soap dish where she would wash her blood-stained hands. While Louisa had stayed behind in Alabama, the Brooks boys would continue to rise in notoriety as many had ventured further west to the states of Texas and Oklahoma. Sadly, the details of this part of the story are not well documented, but it is said that one by one they hunted down 6 of the remaining 7 killers and carried out the blood oath. The Brooks family was relentless in their search for their dad and brother's last killer, but they had no luck in tracking this man down. Their relentless hunt to fulfill the oath had been put on hold as many other feuds occurred between the Brooks family and other groups. Louisa remarried to a man named Jacob Johnston in 1884. Jacob had been a widow after his previous wife Lucinda Riddle had died. The Riddle family disagreed with the marriage, which led to the Brooks-Riddle feud. Another between the Brooks and Hubbard family arose over a horse, and eventually led to the death of Louisa's son Ganem Brooks. These feuds would escalate until Louisa, her daughter Angeline, and Henry, her youngest son, were left alive. Henry would eventually die on January 11, 1920, from gunfire after a group of revenuers had tracked him down in Winston County, Alabama, due to illegal bootlegging activities. In Louisa's later years, she had become a midwife for a local Alabama doctor. She was loved by the people in the area surrounding the Bankhead National Forest, and it's around this time that her late husband Willis Brooks' nickname for her had become widespread, and the name Aunt Jenny became widely used by the locals. She lived till she was 98 years old and passed away on March 29, 1924. One story mentions that on her deathbed, she requested the local preacher to gather a pan of water and her special skull soap dish so that one last time she could try to wash the remaining blood of the oath off her hands. At the end of Aunt Jenny's story, she and the Brooks family were unable to achieve full vengeance against Willis and John's killers. A lifelong blood oath that set in motion several events that led to the end of the Brooks gang and the violent deaths of most of Willis and Louisa's children. Even though later in Louisa's life, when she had dedicated her faith to Christ and caring for the local townsfolk of Haleyville, Alabama, it can be seen why ghost stories persisted in the town and surrounding woods where she was buried. Whether you want to look at her as an angry spirit seeking revenge, a wife and mother wanting retribution for the wrongful loss of her family, or an elderly medicine woman seeking to help her community, It is clear that Aunt Ginny, Louisa Elizabeth Johnston, was beloved by many and feared just as much by her enemies. Nearly a century after her death, visitors still travel deep into the Bankhead Forest, searching for Aunt Ginny's grave, the abandoned homestead, and to even try to catch a glimpse of the old woman said to guard them both. Whether these stories are true or not, one thing is certain: the legend of Aunt Ginny continues to thrive deep within the rural parts of northern Alabama. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed and have a terrifyingly great day.